What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Casual Big Ten Podcast. Today is Friday, July 28th, 2023. A sad day for the podcast. It's the end, man. All the preseason episodes, they are done. This is the last one. I hope you enjoyed all of them, all 16 of them that I put out. Listen, it was a lot of work. I'm not going to lie. It was a lot of work getting all these guys to find a time to come on. And I deserve a pat on my back for all the hard work that I put in so that you guys could be experts on all these teams. But you know what? There's nothing else I would have rather done this summer than hang out with all the guys that I got to meet. And it stops here with the final guy that I got to meet. His name is Jeffrey the Greek. He's on Twitter. I think it's at Jeffrey the Greek. I should have looked this up beforehand. Let me just make sure. I do know that he is the host of the Eyes on Big podcast. He is the only guy, or one of the few only guys, that I could have had on to wrap up this season preview series that I did. It's over, man. This is kind of sad. It's kind of sad. I'm going to take a shot. Like I said, I got my apple Ciroc. I have I'm going to pour the shot right now. I'm going to take it during the outro. I have my, is this going to focus? My Purdue Boilermakers shot glass. Purdue Pete and I are going to hang out here on a Friday. I hope that you're enjoying some drinks on a Friday. I don't even know if this is allowed on YouTube, but I don't think enough people watch for it to matter. Got my shot poured. And before I take it, though, I'm going to listen to this interview with myself and Jeffrey the Greek. It is at Jeffrey the Greek on Twitter. I did get that right. Go give him a follow. Great follow. Great podcast. I talked about this with him just a little bit, and then I'll stop talking. Maybe I'm talking a little bit too much on this intro. Everyone's like, let's hear Jeffrey. We don't want to hear from you anymore. I get it. I talked about this a little bit with Jeffrey, though. He was one of the podcasts that I listened to before I got started. And I really like his show. I'm being sincere when I say that. I do still listen to it. Not as often as I probably should. I'm going to start listening again this football season. The guy is super knowledgeable when it comes to football, when it comes to Big Ten stuff. He's a former player. He really knows the game. And I really hope that we get to do this again, whether it's on my show or his or whatever it is. Maybe we just meet up at a game again. I've been talking about that with all these guys. Would love to just go to an Iowa game with him, or any Big Ten game. He knows about everybody in the Big Ten. So hope you guys enjoyed this interview. I loved hanging out with Jeffrey. There's no other guy that I'd rather recap this series with. So thank you to Jeffrey for coming on once again. And hope you enjoy this interview. Joining me now is Jeffrey the Greek. He is the host of the Eyes on Big podcast. He's also a former Iowa football player. Jeffrey, thank you so much for coming on the show to talk about some preseason football. What's going on, man?
Kent, thanks for having me on. Love the podcast. Anytime I get a chance to talk about Big Ten football, I'm going to jump at it. So let's have some fun.
All right, I have a little confession before we get started. So last year when I started doing the Twitter account and the podcast, I was like, I don't know if this is going to work. Someone talking about the whole conference all the time. So there was a handful of guys that were already doing a podcast, and you guys were one of them. And I did listen to quite a few episodes last year before I started mine. I really enjoyed it. I thought you guys were doing a great job. And, man, I just think it's such an awesome thing to do, like so many teams all at once. And like I said, I think you guys are doing great at it. What got you two started? So your other co-host is Big Kurt. How'd you guys get started with all this?
Yeah, thanks for the kind words. I think this is our fifth season we're heading into now, somewhere around there. I kind of forget sometimes. Maybe it's our sixth. I'm an Iowan transplanted into Minnesota. Kurt's an Illini transferred into Minnesota. At the time, there's wasn't a ton of college football fans up in Minnesota. That's changed a little bit in that time frame. So me and him got to know each other through a mutual friend, and come to find out we're both huge college football fans, Big Ten fans specifically. So this is like 7, 8, 9 years ago. And him and I would have conversations. We're both in sales, have some windshield time, and we would talk about college football. And then we would essentially wind up complaining about the college football podcasts out there because they essentially just talk about the SEC and the top 10 teams in the country, and our interests are wider than that. So for us, we just figured, hey, let's do a podcast where we talk about the Big Ten, and heck, let's talk about all 14 teams in the Big Ten, so every fan base feels like they're represented. So that was really the thing that we tried to attack when we got going.
I'm interested personally. No one else might not care about this, but you guys are Iowa and Illinois fans. Basically, you went to Iowa, so obviously that's the team that you're pulling for. I never revealed who my team originally was ever talking about anything on this show. What do you think do you guys get pushback like when you talk about other teams, especially in like a negative light? Are they like, dude, this guy's an Iowa guy. He doesn't really know. He doesn't really care about Minnesota or Nebraska. Do you guys get a lot of pushback from that? I'm interested about that.
Yeah, we do. And to me and Kurt, we talked about that originally, right from the jump, and we decided we are not going to fake who we are. We're not going to insult the intelligence of our audience. The fact of the matter is, Iowa fan, he's an Illinois fan. We both went to the colleges that we, cheer for. I played football there, so like, there's no way over time in our minds to hide that allegiance. And to me, it's something that annoys me about the national media is they think they have to be this completely neutral, person, like their fandom is completely, neutered from who they are as a person. I don't believe that's possible.
Right.
So to me, it's just like we just decided to own it. For the most part, most fan bases don't have an issue with it. It's more some of the rival fan bases that have an issue with it. But in the end, I think it spices things up more than it, certainly more than it makes things fake, which was 100% what we were trying to avoid.
Yeah. I've had a few people ask me and I've just told them, but like it's funny though because my friends who listen to the show, they're like, "Man, your fandom's really coming through on this take right here. Like people have got to have figured it out." So like I still try not to do it, but cuz I like to try to be neutral as much as possible, and I don't want people to be like, "You're a fan of this team, that's why you're saying that." Cuz that's not really the case. I really do enjoy watching all the teams. But obviously you have to start with one, so that's kind of my background with it. I'm going to try to stay with that as long as possible. We'll see how long that works for, though.
Well, I can see your T-shirt now, so maybe I got a little bit of a sneak peek on that. So yeah,
It's not that one.
I
It's
mean,
not that one.
it's not that. Oh, it's
No.
not. Okay, all right. So that's just a T-shirt you got on. Okay. And I believe we are very neutral, but that could be my ego, playing into maybe we're not as neutral as we think we are. In fact, in Kurt's point of view, I think he's probably more negative to Illinois than any team in the Big Ten. And I don't even think that's actually up for debate. So some Illinois fans might wish he was actually nicer to the team that he cheers for. So that's a personality thing right
That's
there.
totally so that's what my buddies always say because I'm always talking so negative about my team. They're
Sure.
like, "Dude, people are going to know that you're pissed off about this. That's why you're a fan of this team." But anyway, switching gears just a little bit. I was just listening to a couple of your latest episodes. You did a great episode about Northwestern firing Pat Fitzgerald. I have a Northwestern episode that will be out the day before this one comes out. Um, Obviously, that's the biggest news right now. But if you want to listen to more about that news, go check on Eyes on Big podcast. What I'm really interested in, though, is you guys mentioned in that episode how many shows you've had to do for coaches that have gotten fired. Who's the next guy? Who's going to be the next guy that's going to get fired out of the Big Ten?
I would have had Pat Fitzgerald on this list if you asked me this question just 1 week ago. Like you can't drop off a 1-11 burger and head into the football season not being on the hot seat. So obviously that one's taken off. After that, to me, it seems pretty obvious that it would be Indiana's Tom Allen that would be next on the list. And really, the only thing that would save him is Indiana as committed to its football program as other teams in the Big Ten are, in that, do they want to start over again with a new coach? Because, I mean, not to use an old trope, but it's more of a, basketball specific school. But in 2019, everybody's talks about 2020 with Tom Allen, which was a great year, obviously, but 19 was great too. They went 8-5 that year and really should have went 9-4. They absolutely gave that bowl game away. So Tom Allen had all kinds of momentum coming in. And then 2021, they go 2-10. Do not win a game in the Big Ten. Last year, 4-8. I don't know how they pulled that Michigan State game out. So, I mean, we're talking 1-17 in the Big Ten the last 2 years for Tom Allen, with it essentially being a miracle that they're not 0-18. It doesn't get much worse than that. I mean, they battled hard last year, but I would think either a bowl game or darn close to a bowl game is what Tom Allen would want in order for him to come back for another season.
Yikes. I didn't realize that they had only won one like in the last 2 years, or man, that's really bad. I didn't realize that.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like there's a couple of guys, but a lot of it really relates to like the contract, and some of them are stuck in their contract. I'm thinking of like Mel Tucker, of course. I feel like he gets talked about a lot. I think he has to have a good season this year to stay in his job. But yeah, Tom Allen. Yeah, that's a good choice. All right. I wanted to do something really fun with you today. We're going to do like a little bit of a draft here. And I'm so excited about football season. I could not be more excited about football season. But when you think about the upcoming season, what you're really getting excited about is the matchups and the games. So what I wanted to do with you today is I wanted to do a little back and forth draft. We're going to draft our top 4 games. I was going to say teams. Our top 4 games that we're excited about this year. And the one qualifier that I told you that I wanted you to do was you have to pick at least one non-conference game that you're excited about. You can pick that in any round that you want. I will let you go first, and then I'll go second, and we'll just go back and forth from there. I have enough, I think, chambered up that I can get to 4 regardless. So what's your number one game that you're excited about this fall?
So I'm just going to let you know, I'm going to cheat right off the bat here. And I'm not going to choose Ohio State, Michigan either way, even though I got the number 1 pick. Why is that? I'll let you choose it. It's obviously the number 1 game. It's going to be talked about, and it should, right? Ever since I've been 10 years old, I've wanted to watch the Ohio State Michigan game, and, certainly not a fan of either one of those teams. So I'll let you have it. So I'm going to take a different Ohio State game. I'm going to take Ohio State, Penn State for my number 1 game. People forget how close Penn State has been to Ohio State over the last several years. That game has been one of the most underrated games nationally. They had the lead going in the 4th quarter last year, or maybe it was late 3rd quarter. It's like people have completely forgotten that just because there was turnovers at the end of the game. I'm expecting a really tough Penn State team this year. So I love that game. I love the fact that it's in Happy Valley. It'll be the big noon game. So I am as geek for that game as I am any going into the Big Ten season.
I was 100% going to pick that in the first round because I was assuming you were going to take the game. So I'm going to take that one. Then obviously I feel like I can't let that go to the second round and let you take that one as well. So I will take Michigan, Ohio State. I think that there's a chance that the Big Ten East will be on the line for that game again this year. And I also think there's other storylines, even if it's not, where Ryan Day possibly losing his 3rd game in a row to Michigan. It's going to be a big game regardless whether the division is on the line or not. So I'll take the game. I'll take Ohio State and Michigan and send it back to you for your second round pick.
And the one thing I would add to that is, after the streak that Ohio State had against Michigan, things had kind of gone dormant on Twitter and just in general with those two fan bases. Holy buckets. It is spiced up as spicy as it can be. Michigan fans are taking their licks or taking their hits against Ohio State, and Ohio State fans have had no choice but to, take those licks.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
It's been pretty interesting. So we'll just go ahead and cap off the trio here, right? And
Okay.
with the top three teams, and
Yeah.
I'll go Michigan at Penn State, another game that Penn State gets at home. If you look up that game, not quite as good as the Penn State Ohio State games have been. That game was over pretty quick last year when Penn State went into the Big House. Penn State really about the only issue on the team that makes Penn State fans have a little bit of anxiety is their defensive tackles, which is kind of where Michigan wants to attack you with that big offensive line and Blake Corum. And then on the other side, the only place that Penn State also has some concerns is wide receivers, and that's where Michigan has their concern is at cornerback. So we'll see what that matchup produces. Can Penn State make it a better game this year? It's going to be awesome to see.
I'm really excited about that one too. This could be a great game. I think that it being at Penn State is such an X factor this year too, and they're so good. I love their quarterback. I've been talking about them for 3 straight weeks now. Once this podcast comes out, but I'm one of the few people that thinks that they have a better running back room than Michigan. I think that Michigan benefits a little bit from their offensive line, but I love Nicholas Singleton, Katron Allen, and they got Trey Potts this year. I think they're going to be crazy in the backfield. So I love Penn State. Let's see. I'm going to switch gears here. I'm going to not switch gears, but I'm going to switch divisions. I want to pick a West game. So I'm going to go with, let's see. I got a couple written down here. I'm going to take Iowa at Wisconsin as one of the games that I have circled right here. Iowa, Cade McNamara, new quarterback. Wisconsin, Tanner Mordecai, new quarterback. I really like what's going to change. Everything's supposed to change for both of these teams, right? It's supposed to be we're going to open it back up for Wisconsin, which is something that we're not used to seeing from them. They're always running the ball. And then, like I said, Iowa, can their offense actually get something off the ground this year? At Wisconsin is going to be a tough place to get that done. So as far as the Big Ten West games, I think this is the best one that we have this year. What do you think about that game?
Yeah, you took my next pick, but that's okay. I figured you would. Here's what's crazy is this game, people maybe aren't thinking about this now. I mean, we're still in July. Suddenly, this is a game versus two teams with different styles.
Yeah.
It has been the essentially mirror image of each other for the past, I mean, basically 30 years, since Barry Alvarez has been there. That's not the case anymore. So what will this look like with the different styles? It's incredible. Iowa has gotten a little bit of momentum back in the series, winning 2 of the last 3, but haven't been nearly as successful going into Camp Randall. So that is going to be a great game, you would think, that would determine a lot of who's going to Indianapolis out of the West.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, what's your third pick here?
I could go everywhere here, a lot of different places. I mean, you kind of already go, you've got the big 3 in the East that we talked about. Now we've scratched off what is considered the top 2 in the West. I'm going to give a little bit of love here to the team that's not getting talked about enough in the West, and that's Illinois. So I'm going to go week 2 and Illinois at Kansas. Again, styles make the fights. And you have got a front 7 dominated, rushing dominated team in Illinois going on the road to play a Friday night game against a Big 12 team that's got a completely different style of offense with Kansas' Jalen Daniels. Hopefully he's healthy going into that game. Little bit of a border war, a little bit, so like to me, I think that is one that's off the radar that people aren't talking about nearly as much. I think that's going to be a blast to watch that Friday night.
I'm a little nervous about Illinois. I was really high on them last year, and I'm kind of coming back off of them now because I'm nervous. Ryan Walters is gone. I don't know what the quarterback situation is going to be, what their offense is going to look like. Chase Brown gone. I mean, I don't know. I'm not really sure what to expect out of there, but I'm interested to see what they're going to look like after. I thought they kind of overperformed last year. So we'll see with that one. I'll go my non-conference game too. I got 2 that I had circled. I think I'm going to go with, I hate to keep talking about the same teams, but I'll go with Ohio State at Notre Dame. I think that that's going to be a big game for them early on. Again, it's they're trying to figure some things out. Kyle McCord is technically still relatively unknown. He's been there long enough now, though. He should be fine. But then I was just trying to look up who Notre Dame's quarterback was. Do you remember who that transfer was from? What was it, Wake Forest? Sam
Yeah.
Hartman. Sam Hartman. That's who it was. Okay, I just looked it up. So Notre Dame's got Sam Hartman. He's been in college football since I was born, basically. So they have a lot going on. That game's going to be circled for me. I'm obviously going to be watching that whole thing. So I'll take my non-conference game is going to be Ohio State at Notre Dame. All right, so that leaves you with one more pick, one more big game in the Big Ten that you're excited about this year. What do you like?
And the one thing I would add to the Ohio State Notre Dame game is I only think that's going to be a big game if Notre Dame pulls off the upset. Otherwise, it's not that big of a game, and I just don't see Notre Dame pulling off the upset. So that's kind of my take on that.
Yeah.
I'm going to cheat again. Kent. I'm sorry.
That's all right. Go ahead.
I'm taking 2 with my last one.
Okay.
And I'm going to take Nebraska's first 2 games.
Oh,
okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, it's kind of hard to separate either one of these because I think, it's Matt Rule's first year at Nebraska. Obviously, the passion, some would say craziness at times, of Nebraska fans is always dialed in, especially now that they've got some needed new blood inside the program, leading the program. And I could see them going 2-0, 1-1, or maybe 0-2, going off of these first 2 games. And it's just odd. Like, how often does a Power 5 coach, the first year he takes over a program, start his first 2 games on the road?
Yeah.
That is bonkers to me. Like, you just don't see that. So I think they're right around a touchdown, maybe a little bit more underdog coming up to Minnesota. Thursday night game. I'll be in attendance. I hope the Eyes on Big podcast is going to have a tailgate like we did 2 years ago for this Minnesota Ohio State. I will be. This is my first live football contest. In close to a year. So that is going to be a huge game for PJ Fleck in that game. You've already got your program established. You're at home. To lose that game to the new coaching staff coming in, that would be a tough loss for Gopher fans to stomach. And then let's say Minnesota wins. Okay. Let's say Minnesota wins somewhat convincingly, 13, 14-point win. Now you switch it over to Nebraska. They go on the road to play a hated rival in Colorado with their brand new coach, Deion Sanders. That is 2 pretty crazy, interesting storylines for Nebraska right out of the chute.
Colorado is supposed to be really bad, though, right?
I believe Nebraska will win that game, and I don't think Colorado's going to be very good. In fact, I've got a wager with a buddy of mine on their season total, and I took the under for Colorado. In the end, it's a rivalry and it's college football. Second week on the road for Nebraska, so stranger things have happened.
What was the line set at for the Colorado win total for you guys?
You could get it as high as 4.5, low as 3.5. We set it at 4. We kind of just went in the middle. So I took the under 4. He took the over 4. And if we tie, I think we're going to figure out something fun to do with the bet. But
now I have a reason.
I don't know.
Colorado this year. I'll cheer for you. I'm going to cheer against Colorado. I'll be cheering for you on that one.
All right, sounds good.
I also had Nebraska at Minnesota written down, also mainly because it's just like week 1 opening Big Ten matchup too. It's all like that's just going to be awesome. But also with everything that you said with Nebraska, everything they have going on, and then Minnesota, I think it's a big year for Minnesota. I'll talk about them more on that last segment. But the only other game I have written down, and it transitions perfectly into what I wanted to talk about next, which was the East and West champions. I will take as my last game that I'm excited about Iowa at Penn State. I think that the reason why it transitions so well for me is because those are the 2 teams that I have chosen to win the East and the West. I have picked Penn State to win the East. I think that Iowa has a really good shot to win the West. A couple other teams out there that they're going to be competing against, but everyone's talking about Penn State next year, and I think that they're overlooking how good they're going to be this year. Their defense is going to be strong. They got amazing defensive end. I think his name is Chop Robinson. I'm absolutely in love with Drew Aller. I already talked about the running backs. I'm all over Penn State this year. I think that this could be their year. I think they're going to surprise Michigan at home. And then I think it's a winnable game at Ohio State. So I have Penn State coming out of the East. So I'll take Iowa at Penn State as my last game. Who do you have winning each division this year?
Hey, I want to give a shout out to you for not taking the chalk bets, in the East. So good for you. Always like to see somebody spice it up a little bit. I got to take a bit of a pass here. I apologize to your
That's all right.
listeners. I save my official predictions until we do our own podcast. We
Perfect.
actually, Kurt and I sandbag pretty heavily. We don't do our picks until really right before the season starts, just in case there's a surprise, injury or whatever. So, but I will say this is, you stole a little bit of my thunder there in that I believe Penn State should be considered right there with Ohio State as a team that can win the East, and then obviously the entire Big Ten. I mean, I think it's really close to Ohio State. I think Ohio State is really close to Michigan. At some point, I typically become a you have to prove it to me type of deal. So as of right now, one of those two teams has got to prove it to me that they can knock Michigan off with a 2-year run like this, and Michigan looking strong again. It's not like it's been a 2-year run where they lost a bunch of guys. They've got a ton of their playmakers and quarterback back for this year. In the West, I'll start with this and say I'm continually surprised on how bullish how many people are with Wisconsin.
Mm.
I'm not saying Wisconsin should not be considered one of the favorites in the West. I'm just surprised how much of a prohibitive favorite they are in the West when you factor in everything's new. I mean, this is an entirely new scheme on both sides of the ball. Okay. I can count, I would take several hands, maybe even some of my toes to count how many times the hot group of 5 coach has come into a Power 5 conference and struggled more than people thought he would. Okay. I think Fickle's a great coach. There's a difference between doing it at Cincinnati in the AAC. He coached at Ohio State. I get that. But not with Wisconsin's talent at Ohio State,
Right.
So like, there's just more factors here. I don't doubt that Fickle's a great coach and going to have things up and running eventually. I'm just surprised how ironclad people are for Wisconsin this year. Outside of that, we kind of talked about it already, but people are sleeping on Illinois way more than I think they should be. My two factors on why Illinois will be a factor to get to Indianapolis is coaching. To pat my own back, I was high on Brett Bielema the second it was announced. Felt like I was on an island with that take a couple years ago, and I think he's proven me correct. He's a great football coach. And then, to bolster that this year, this could be the best front seven in the Big Ten, or at least in the Big Ten West. This is a destructive defense. Newton on the defensive line, I think, is almost unquestionably the best defensive lineman going into the season. And then Iowa. The defense and the special teams, you can pretty much just set your clock on how good the Iowa defense and special teams are going to be. And then on offense, they needed to. They got an influx of talent, most notably, as we pointed out, Cade McNamara at quarterback. So to me, if the offensive line can finally turn the corner and be just above average, the offense will look a lot better. If the offensive line is good, this entire Iowa football team could be good to great.
Yeah, I'm really excited about Iowa. I think that, I already said it. I think they're going to win the West. So I like their over under too. I think it was set at originally it was at like 8.5, and then, or maybe it was 7.5 and moved to 8.5. Either way, I'm still on
Yep.
the over because I think that they could win 10 games this year with the way that the schedule shakes out. That was a little bit of talk about the Big Ten trophy. Let's talk about a different trophy, the Heisman Trophy. Um, I have been very vocal about Nicholas Singleton. He's plus 5,000 right now to win the Heisman. I put a $10 bet on him, but what I wanted to do with you is, do you have a guy in the Big Ten, or who would you spend $100 on if you had to win the Heisman? I got the odds pulled up here so I can look up anyone that you want. If I took that $100 and put it on Singleton, I'd win 5,000. I'd be really happy about that. Is there anyone in the Big Ten, or who would you bet overall for that Heisman Trophy this year?
Yeah, I mean, one of the factors that you have to have, or two main factors with this, right, is position and odds. With the odds, you want your ROI to be as good as you can. So I know that plays into it for you. With Nick Singleton, would love to see Nick Singleton. I played running back in high school and for a half a second at Iowa. So like I always feel like I'm a running back at heart. So I love Nick Singleton. I love Blake Corum, right? I mean, to see a Big Ten running back win the Heisman would be incredible. But the fact of the matter is 20 of the last 23 Heisman winners have been quarterbacks. So it's just hard to not pick a quarterback. Essentially, it's the best quarterback on the best team is what it's going to be. So I think it comes down to JJ McCarthy and whoever the starting quarterback is at Ohio State. And the issue with JJ McCarthy is that the guy I mentioned, I mean, he's got two running backs that he's handing the ball off to behind him to essentially soak up some of the stats. So it's just hard for me to see. I don't think, winning a Heisman for his quarterback is Jim Harbaugh's main goal. He's trying to attack here. Now, I do. JJ McCarthy will attack downfield more this year, and I think you saw that at the last 4 or 5 games of the season last year. So I think you're going to see that more out of JJ McCarthy. But in the end, if I'm going in the conference, I'm going to take the Ohio State starting quarterback. Who exactly that's going to be, I'm not 100% sure yet, but that you're still getting pretty good odds there, and that's who I'd go with.
Yeah, Kyle McCord's at plus 2,200. The other guy I never looked up. I don't know if he. Oh, here he is. It's Devin Brown, right? And he's at plus 6,000. So yeah, the one thing about Ohio State though is I've heard, like, just through people and channels on Twitter and stuff like that, that there could be a change mid-season though. So that would really put a kink in the odds, at least for just the Heisman Trophy. But obviously, like you said, Ryan Day's not worried about that. He's trying to win football games and go to the playoffs. So he doesn't care about that. But that would definitely put a kink in those plans if you bet on one of those guys for sure. All right, last topic before I let you go here. I tried to get you out of here in 30 minutes. I wanted to hear something that is going to put you out on a limb this year. It doesn't have to be about a specific player. It could be about a team or just something in the conference in general. Is there a take that you have that you're like, I'm just going to die on this hill and whatever happens, happens, and you're just going out there and you're saying, we're going to see if it happens this year? What do you got for out on the limb take of the year for the preseason?
Yep. So the funny thing is I have been kicking around this topic for a Twitter topic to put out there to get Big Ten fans a little bit riled up. So I've got a quasi list put together. The thing is I don't love any of these hot predictions. Like I don't feel great about most of these actually coming true, but I feel great about one of them, coming true. One of a homer bet be that Iowa is going to be in the top 6 or 7 in the conference for points per game. So you know what? I'll just go with that. I'll show my homer a little bit. But the one thing I do want to point out is in 2020, Iowa was second in the Big Ten in points per game. Seems like it's 800 years ago, but it was 3 years ago. The year before that, they were 7th. And the year before that, they were 4th. So 2018, 19, and 20, they averaged the 4th highest scoring offense in the Big Ten. Okay. Now, a lot of that has to do with the style of ball that they play, which is they're they're typically in a position where they're on the short side of the field, and their defense and special teams add to the scoring average per game. Okay. So I don't think Iowa's going to have even near the top for total yards or total offense, but I think they'll get back to playing the team complementary defense and offense, and I think you'll see the points per game jump up, and of course the way too much talked about Brian Ferentz contract and having the points per game. I think they put that in the contract because they felt like they had to get something out there. Also, I think they feel that they're a little bit more, they're confident internally that they'll be able to reach those numbers.
Can you remind me that contract little wrinkle? I don't remember exactly what it was. Do you know it exactly, or did they just mention that there's points per game in his contract?
Yeah, essentially they expect 25 points per game scored a year on average. So, the funny thing is first game out of the gates, Utah State is, I mean, they could be in the team picture for the worst group of 5 team in the country. So what do you do? Yeah, what do you
You
do
got to
if you
try to
got
score
42
100.
points going into the fourth quarter? Go for it, right? Like I would at least think about it if I was Kirk and Brian Ferentz. So yeah, it's 25 points per game, which is a full touchdown more than they for points per game than they had last year, which was obviously a historically horrible offense for Iowa. So I think you see a bump up, and a bump up would be more in that 2018, 19, 20 range, which is where they want to be.
Yeah. I'm expecting a big improvement on the offense this year for Iowa. Like I said, I got them in the Big Ten championship, so I'm hoping that they are. I got 2 quick hot takes. I'd like to get your thoughts on it. The one that I've been dying on, the hill that I've been dying on, I should say, is that I said that Minnesota is going to finish last in the Big Ten West. That's my first one. And then this one is newer since the firings happened at Northwestern. I always like cheering for Northwestern. I just feel like they don't have as many fans or people pulling for them. So this year, I'm going to say that Northwestern is going to win 4 or more football games still. Even after the firing of Pat Fitzgerald, I think that they're going to come together. They still have Ben Bryant, the transfer from Cincinnati. They have A.J. Henning from Michigan. I think if they can get a couple of stops, the offense will be able to score. I'm going to say they're going to win at least 4 games, which I feel like at this point is really out on the limb because I've seen people predicting them going 0-12. So I'm going to say 4 more wins for Northwestern. What do you think about those 2 out on the limb takes?
So, like your Penn State pick, I give you props, right, for getting out there. So I love it. I love it. Even though I very much disagree with your last 2 takes here. Minnesota is an established football program. I like Ethan Kaligmanis at quarterback. Joe Rossi is one of the more underrated defensive coordinators in the country. So it's hard for me to see them dropping off that much, even though they have an extremely tough schedule. So I know that I'm sure that plays into it for you. One of the hot takes that I've thought about is Minnesota missing a bowl. So I'm not that far off from you, but it is a bridge too far for me to say that they would finish underneath Northwestern. You mentioned their quarterback and AJ Henning, who are on the roster now. We got some time before the football season starts where somebody could get into the transfer portal. So, and if one or both of those happen, yikes. I mean, I know they kept most of the staff together, which is a thing of its own. When you look at the reason that they got rid of their head coach, the position coaches are much more closer to the each individual player than the head coach ever is. So I know they kept the staff intact, but now you got a rookie head coach that's suddenly thrust into this, and they didn't have playmakers to begin with. And quite honestly, I'm not sure if they've got great lines either. So this is not a Northwestern team that I'm confident in. So again, I wish you luck.
Thank you.
If either one of those happen, that'd be incredible. But I just not what I see from what I'm looking at on paper right now.
The way I look at it is that if I'm wrong about Minnesota specifically, that's the one that I started like the beginning of the summer. I think that it'll bring people back to my Twitter page just to tell me how wrong I am. And, that interaction will be great. I will look forward to that. And if I'm right, then I'm a genius at that point, if I'm actually right about that. So that's how I look at that.
Good point.
Jeffrey the
Good point.
Greek, his podcast is called Eyes on Big. Is it spelled B? Is it B1G, right? Or in the podcast app, is it
B1G.
just big? B1G,
Yep.
right?
You got it. Eyes,
Okay.
EYES on big B1G. The eyes is for I for Iowa, I for Illinois. That's kind of a play on words right there.
Love it.
Confuses the heck out of people, but yep, eyes on big.
What do you guys got coming up the rest of this summer? And then tell it once again if there's anywhere they can find you, maybe your Twitter and everything like that.
Yeah, definitely look me up on Twitter, please. I am at Jeffrey the Greek, Illinois. Kurt is at B1G KURT. The podcast Twitter account is pretty much there to send out the podcast link when we put a new podcast out. We're looking to have a guest on. Can't announce it yet, but he's somebody that does a lot of statistics for college football. So try to come on soon. We'll go right into our team previews where we do typically 4 teams per pod, 4, 4, and 4. And then the last pod will be Michigan and Purdue, which is the 2 teams that are in the Big Ten championship the year before. And then we're into our predictions for what we look for the season, and then into week 1 previews. So throughout the season, we do 2 podcasts, one to preview the upcoming games, and then a Sunday one to do the post view of each game played. So always looking for more listeners. Please join in. And yeah, we love it.
Thank you so much for coming on, man. I'll be checking that out. We'll keep track of you. Talk to you soon. Later, maybe mid-season, we'll do a little update, see where I'm at on my Minnesota prediction.
All right. I love it.
All right. Thanks, Jeffrey. All right. Once again, that was Jeffrey the Greek. He's on Twitter, at Jeffrey the Greek. Eyes on Big Podcast. On Twitter, it's eyes. You got to spell out the eyes. But the logo is the eyes. It's Illinois and Iowa. I like that. That's creative. It's the Eyes on Big podcast, B1G. Of course I knew that. I don't know why I asked Jeffrey about that. I knew that. Like I said, I've been listening to his show for over a year now. That's it, man. That's the end of the series. For some of you, it's the end of ever listening to my podcast again. You know what? Don't do that. Don't be that person. Stick around. Football season's right around the corner. I got more stuff for you guys. I got some more ideas up in this. They're rattling around up in this old noggin. I said I was going to take a shot. I could have poured it out and put water in here. I didn't. Or did I? Actually, you know what? I did. If you're watching on YouTube, I did. Because like I said, I don't know if this is allowed. This is just water. Take this shot. Cheers to the Big Ten. Cheers to Purdue Pete, who's on my shot glass. And cheers to football. Woo! Thank you all for watching. Appreciate it. Stick around. I'll be back next week at some point, and I'll be dropping another episode. We'll be mid-season. Before you know it, we'll be at the beginning of the season. Man, my eyes are watering a little bit. I usually take a chaser with my water. And I wanted to be a tough guy on the podcast, so I didn't do that right. Hope you guys like that, man. Go back and listen. If you're listening right now, you just came here for Jeffrey, go back and find your team and listen to that episode. So I promise it's good. See you guys in the future.
Everything